I was pushed to be a businesswoman by my mother. You're like your father. Everything as a kid, you're like your father. You're a business person like your father, and I guess that played. And I thought I was going to die. I said, what have I done? These women wearing scarves down to their eyebrows and house coats and like clippy clogs, and I'm just off the plane running the biggest fashion company in America. We don't know how to dream big enough as to what could happen to us. And that's what I learned that day when he drove away. I was willing to change my entire life to give up the dream, and you don't even know what you have. The first words out of someone's mouth was, in this tone of voice, I can't believe how much attention God is paying to her again. And before I could come back with something witty, because you have to be very witty, someone else in the crowd said, yes, but don't you see how much attention she pays to God? We're raised from the earliest age to make the big people in our life happy. That's mommy and daddy, and then it's the teachers, and then it's the friends, and now we're grown-up people pleasers, so pretzeled we can't stand ourselves. And just be true to yourself. It's the greatest gift you can give yourself.
Cheers. L'chaim.
I'm so happy to be with you.
What's l'chaim? For those watching who don't speak Hebrew.
To life.
We got to share a little bit. The words we use.
Okay, to life.
To life is l'chaim in Hebrew.
Yes.
Which is cheers.
Yes.
That's awesome. When we speak Hebrew because we're Jews.
And we lived in Israel.
We lived in Israel. That's awesome. Very cool. Well, I'll tell the people who you are.
Okay.
And then we'll spend a little time listening to your story. I think it's a fascinating one. As the title in the video says, you're my mom.
Correct.
You're my mother.
Proud mother.
Proud Jewish mother. Proud Jewish mother. And obviously I want to sit with you because you're my mom. But I also want to sit with you, and you know this. I say this all the time. You have one of the more fascinating, full, rich, diverse, crazy, hectic, all over the place, across countries type of life story. I think part of that is a result of who you are. I don't think you've ever been the type to spend 40 years at a desk at a company and then retire. And I think part of that is just life. Life happens and you go with the flow, and your parents happen to live in one end of the country and you happen to spend 20 years in another, and we'll talk about all that. But for whatever the reason, your life is a very interesting, you ended up with a very interesting story. And I'm extra excited to sit with you to explore that, as well as have a conversation as my mom, because there's things I'm curious about, and maybe we could explore a little bit of my childhood through your eyes, which would be fun. But yeah, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but so again, I really appreciate you sitting down with me.
Well, I have to say, before we get started, that I am more than honored to have been invited to Clearfield.
Invited to Clearfield, yeah.
By my boy.
Absolutely. No, this is, we're just at about 15, number 15 episode, I think. Maybe in the area of 15, I can't remember. Yeah, getting you in under 20 is good, right at the beginning.
This is an honor.
That's awesome. Cool. So as I always do with people, just to make things a little, your story's so hectic, we have to go to the beginning, otherwise we'd get lost. So take us to the beginning. I know you were born in Los Angeles, so let's go there and we'll kind of start there with your past, your history. So let's go to Los Angeles. You don't have to say the year so people don't know how old you are, but what happened?
They'll do the math.
They'll do the math. Okay.
So I was born in LA. I'm the oldest of two children. I have a brother 19 months younger. And was very popular kid in school, very fun-loving. At 18, I graduated. My parents sent me to Hawaii for a trip. I never came back, kind of in our genes, which people know your story. I lived there for 3 months. I worked selling dresses in the Hilton Hawaiian Village.
Okay.
On Oahu. Came back, moved to Woodland Hills to start Pierce Junior College. Got my first job.
So why'd you go to Hawaii in the beginning for 3 months? Just a trip?
I was going with a friend. She canceled, and I went by myself.
As just a trip?
Just a trip.
Okay.
Stayed 3 months. It was during the Vietnam War. It was fascinating.
And that's the first thing I'll say about you. You are the type of person who would go by yourself if a friend cancels on you.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Okay, go ahead. I just want to get that in there.
Yes.
Okay.
So came back. My first real job was as, when I was 16, I worked in Kenny's shoe store.
So everything to do with
Everything
clothes?
was clothes and retail, and I have no idea why.
Okay.
Then JCPenney hired me. That's how I supported myself through the junior college. They opened a new shopping mall in Woodland Hills, and I applied for Saks Fifth Avenue. I got the clerical position in designer and better sportswear. I then got promoted to assistant manager, and then when I was 23, this was, a couple of years, my manager was leaving, and I asked for the position, and they told me I was too young. But they would send me, my store manager would send me to UCLA to get a retail management degree. And in 5 years, when the new store opened in Costa Mesa, this blows my mind how people plan their lives out.
Okay.
Then I would get that job. So I said, okay, I started school, and 3 weeks later he called me in and said, you have to quit UCLA because we're promoting you to the youngest manager in Saks history for designer and better sportswear.
Wow.
Okay. Then I got a phone call from a friend who had moved from Saks to Bonwit Teller, and it was the one and only time in my life that I got bought. They called me. I interviewed at Bonwit Teller, if that's not around anymore. They were on Wilshire Boulevard and Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, and I got the designer and better sportswear manager with the agreement that in 1 year they would send me to New York.
Okay.
So I went back to my manager and I said, what should I do? He said, I'll never forget his words. He said, I will always only be able to give you hamburger and they will buy you steak. You have to go.
Wow. So he knew what he was about. He knew what they were about.
Totally. They were buying me. Yeah. So I went, and a year later, I was very successful. And a year later, they didn't keep their deal. So I had a friend that I'd met with my work at Saks. She lived in New York and ran a fashion company. I called her up and she set up interviews. I flew to New York. Lord & Taylor moved me to New York to be the assistant buyer of Anne Klein, Calvin Klein, and Ralph Lauren.
Okay, so you're how old?
25? No, 26.
You're 20. You're 26?
No, I'm older. It was 79 or 80 that I made the move to New York.
So you're 30?
Yeah, about just under 30.
Under 30. College degree?
2-year junior college.
2-year junior college. Now,
everything I've ever done is on the job.
At the time, was college a requirement as it is today, or?
Nobody ever asked me.
No one asked you. Interesting. So you're 30 and you're headed to New York to run what? To
be assistant buyer for Anne Klein, Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren at Lord & Taylor.
An assistant buyer. I know nothing about fashion, so you got to educate me. Assistant buyers what?
All of the clothes of those designers, we would go to the designers, the showrooms, and buy the clothes that were in the stores. Now, I worked there for 3 months, and it was clear that the buyer was an old maid, and she used to bring her dog and work 24/7.
Okay.
And I thought that was like ridiculous. I've never been a workaholic,
right,
ever. So I went in and quit. And the store vice president said to me, she banged the desk, and she said, "This will be on your record forever. Think about it." So I went out and I called my friend, and I said, "She said it's going to be on my record." And my friend said, "What record?" So I went in and quit.
Oh, wow. Look at you. So instead of dirtying your record, you'd rather just not even start one.
It was ridiculous.
Okay.
So then that's when I made the move to Wholesale.
And you're in New York.
I'm in New York. I moved to 7th Avenue, some small companies. And then I got a call from somebody in Europe.
Okay.
Oh, I'm an entrepreneur. What's the definition of an entrepreneur? Very bright, great ideas, shoot out the gate, and no follow through. That's most entrepreneurs.
No follow through.
No follow through. That's why I've done so much, because I never saw anything to the end.
Okay. Okay.
Anyway, very end of story. I started my own business, and I worked for the Versace group, and I represented American stores to the European designers. So I did the pret-a-porters. I went to Milan, Paris, New York 3 times a year. And when they were in New York, I rented hotel rooms, hired the models, and sold the clothes with the designers that came over. So I did that. And I was in Europe, in Milan. It was the end of a show. I've never been impressed by any of this. So I was at dinner at midnight. And if I don't eat by 7, you don't want to be around me.
You're thinking, okay.
So a very famous couple that had had their show in Milan that day came in, and I'm hungry and I'm tired, and they come in and everybody stands, bellissimo, bellissimo. And the wife comes over and whispers to the model on my right and me something very not nice about a man in the room.
Okay.
So I looked at her and I said, excuse me, and I got up, I went back to my hotel room. This was my Prada moment, if you've ever seen the movie.
Okay.
I got on a plane the next morning and flew home. Done.
Home is LA.
New York.
Oh, New York, okay.
Done. I'm not working in that anymore.
Okay.
So then I didn't know what I was going to do, and Anne Klein called me, the company.
How old are you at this point?
30, yeah.
So this
30.
all took place within a year?
Couple of years, yeah. 30, 31. That they were launching a new company called Anne Klein 2, and would I come for an interview?
So before you go on, this is really interesting. There's a theme in your story, and the theme is you move on from one thing to the next.
Never burning bridges.
Right, and that's what I'm getting to. And people reach out to you to recruit you either for the same or something else once you've moved on. So the theme is what you just said, you never burn bridges. Looking back, again, does that fall under the person you are? Or since you were 23 or 18 and on Oahu, did you always have that in mind to where
had nothing in mind.
Nothing in
mind.
mind.
No plan whatsoever. Very shallow.
Shallow. So the fact that you didn't burn bridges, it was just part of who you were.
My parents raised us. My father was a tremendous worker, very dedicated, loyal, all for the family. And I took those on. I was pushed to be a businesswoman by my mother. You're like your father. Everything as a kid, you're like your father. You're a business person like your father. And I guess that played.
So while you were going through the thing, when you left the job, you didn't say, I won't burn bridges. You just happened to not because of who the person
Yeah, everybody always liked me.
Got it. Okay.
Very popular.
Okay.
So they called Anne Klein. I was the 3rd employee hired for Anne Klein. I was the head of the retail division, which meant I traveled to all the department stores. We did $80 million at launch. Donna Karan was the designer. I decided I was going to we're Jewish, and I was looking at my heritage, my Judaism, and decided that I was now about 33, that I wanted to keep the Sabbath.
Okay.
And I went in and quit because I had to work Saturdays.
At this point, how many times did you quit in your life?
A lot. If it didn't work, it didn't work. I'm out of there.
So you're a pro at quitting at this point in your life. You know exactly
Always
what to say.
with stepping stones. Well, no, this was new because I went in and I said, I'm becoming religious. I can't work Saturdays. And I assumed I couldn't. So I said, I'm quitting. So they said, why do you have to quit? Why can't you do it Monday through Friday? I said, if you let me, great. So I stayed. 3 promotions later, after becoming Sabbath observant, I became the national sales director of the company. And I worked with Donna Karan for 8 years.
While not working on weekends.
Not working weekends.
National sales director.
Yeah. Number 2 under the president.
Number 2 under the president. Give me a quick day in the life of that. Because I hear this title and I have no clue what it means.
So whenever Bloomingdale's, Saks, Macy's, Bergdorf Goodman, stores around the country Nordstrom, any stores. I was the person they negotiated deals with, markdown costs, things like that. I had a staff of over 100 women, sales team.
Women, not men.
There were a couple of men, but really we were women.
Okay.
I would do projections with them to meet their sales goals. They had accounts. This one had Saks, this one had Bloomingdale's. I would travel the country. I was the spokeswoman for the company. So if Vogue or Bazaar or any of the fashion magazines, Women's Wear Daily, wanted to know why Donna liked gray, they called me.
Wow. So you
A lot
negotiated...
of television, things like that.
So you negotiated deals with Nordstrom's?
Big stores, all the stores.
Wow. And you've done that for how long?
I was there 8 years.
8 years you've done that. Let me ask you this. Day one of doing that to 8 years in, is that something you become better at with every deal you close? Or was it always easy? Was it always hard?
Well, you learn as you go.
Okay.
But I definitely had a knack. I could do projections for all the 30 Saks Fifth Avenue stores and tell you almost within 5 pieces, like a sweater, a skirt, a blouse, that what each store was going to buy, and always hit projections.
Wow.
Yeah.
So again, back to Never Burn Bridges, this was something part of who you were that they saw and said, we should put her in this position.
I guess they promoted me, yeah.
Because you never really spent time.
When the position opened, I never went after the position. Didn't think I could do it, never thought about it. There was such competition with these women. And I got the job. They called me in and said, we're giving you the job. I was shocked.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, 8 years go by. What happens next?
What happens after Saks? So in there, I started to become religious. And I decided that I needed to learn more about my Judaism. Otherwise, it would be rote and it wouldn't last. So I understood that I needed to go to there's a women's college called Neve Yerushalayim in Israel for women studying who want to learn about their heritage. So I went on 2 vacations and I saw the school, and a friend of mine was learning there. She had just graduated Juilliard School of Dance. She said, I've got to clear up the modesty issues, dancing in costumes, mixed audiences, things like that. All this had to do with religion. She went to Israel. I thought what she was doing was great for her, not for me, and I went. After 2 visits, I realized that I needed to learn, and I went in and I gave a 4-month notice. I said, I'm going to Israel to study my Judaism. I'm giving you 4 months. I will train a replacement, but I'm gone.
What did you see during the initial visit to Israel that made you go back and give a 4-month notice? What was it?
Meaning.
In what way?
Meaning in my life that there's something higher than myself. God, community. I never had community because in most corporations or businesses, everyone's community is their job. And that's why suicide rates are highest on weekends. They go home and they're alone. They don't know what to do with themselves. The loneliness, this is known. So all of this spoke to me. And I'd been studying in New York, taking classes during the week, started my path of being religious. And 2 weeks before I was supposed to leave, the chairman of the board called me in and said, we are not accepting your resignation. Do you understand? You're shooting yourself in the foot. You'll never get a job again in fashion. What are you doing?
And you're 34 now?
36. I went to Israel at 36.
36. So 18 to 36.
Just floated.
Floated.
Thinking.
18 years you have under your belt in the fashion industry. And let's be nice and not count the shoe store at 16.
Right.
18 years in the fashion industry.
Right.
And you go to Israel. You experience a little bit of meaning.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
You experience a little bit of meaning.
Yeah.
Am I crazy, or was it that easy to throw the 18 years? Because with 18 years under your belt, you could go doing what you've done. You could pretty much knock on anyone's door and say, here's what I've done, hire me. I got asked to go on interviews. Now, I want to take a side break for a minute
and talk about women.
Okay.
I suffered from what many women suffer from, which is the imposter syndrome.
What's that?
I had this huge position. I had the title. I was in Four Seasons, Russian Tea Room. Anytime I took the president of Bloomingdale's out, we went to these places, credit card on me, everything. I never believed that I knew what I was doing, and I never believed that my skills and the greatness of what I did that I could translate it to another job, so I never went on another interview.
Wow. And what's that syndrome called?
Imposter syndrome.
And people have it.
Yeah, women especially.
Why do you think women have that?
Lack of worthiness, don't believe in themselves.
Wow. So you do
I didn't know it at the time, but today I did. Yeah.
So you're out there doing what you're doing, good at it.
Excellent.
Really good at it, not believing that you really know what you're doing, which is fascinating to think of, that someone could even be that great at anything with that lack of belief.
Correct. But I'm not the only one, I can tell you. So he calls and says, you're not going, we're not accepting your resignation. And I sat there, I tortured myself to make the decision to go. You have no idea.
To Israel?
Yeah, to study for 6 months. I was going to quit Anne Klein. I could afford to go. I rented an apartment in the old city of Jerusalem, and I was going to come back and get another job. And he said to me, instead, we're giving you a full leave of absence to go to Israel for 6 months. It had never been done in the fashion industry that somebody became, Orthodox religion and went off to study.
I have to ask this because, and if my guess is not correct, you'll have to tell me why they were so generous to you. My guess, listening to your story, is you made the company so much money that they were willing to bend over backwards to the degree that they have. If that's not true, why do you think they were that flexible with you?
I think they really appreciated me.
Because you...
With the money I brought in, and I'm an amazing team leader. And there was a lot of... the women cat-like, and that all got better under my...
So your value to them was such where they offered you this 1 full year leave of absence.
6 months.
6 months leave of absence because they wanted you that bad.
Yes.
At that time, looking back, today I know I could see when you talk about it, you get excited when you say this never happened in the fashion industry. At the time when it was offered to you, do you remember yourself thinking, well, this is different, this never happened, and they're offering it to me?
I was like, holy cow.
You were at the time.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so you take the 6
So
months.
I leave, I go, and I rent an apartment, and it was amazing. And at the end of the 6 months, I realized I couldn't leave. I was 36 years old. I had never thought of being a wife and a mother. I had bought into the sick, feminist ripoff that most of my generation suffered from.
Okay.
And I realized I couldn't leave.
Israel.
I needed to continue my learning.
So initially, when you went to Israel, I'm interrupting a lot, but I want to understand your story. Initially, when you went to Israel, 3 months, 4 months?
6.
6 months. You told me it was meaning that caused you to go back and give your 4-month notice.
Correct.
What was it about the second 6 months that made you go back and quit for good?
Well, wait, I didn't.
You didn't quit yet?
No.
Okay.
I'm still there.
You're still in Israel?
On 6 months leave of absence.
Okay.
I realize I can't leave. I've got to learn how to be a wife and a mother in Judaism. I didn't know anything. So it's the end of the 6 months, and I did the only thing I knew to do, and I wrote a letter, and I asked for another 6 months. And I got a phone call telling me that I could have it.
So this is a full year leave of absence?
Full year leave. I never had to come back.
Okay.
And that was March. In June, I got a phone call from a man by the name of Tomio Taki. He was is a Japanese man who owned then Takio, which was the holding company for Anne Klein, Anne Klein II, Donna Karan, DKNY, telling me he was going to be in Hong Kong with his wife on business, and he wanted to come and spend a day with me in Jerusalem. Mr. Taki and I were not friends. when we used to do the collections, prior to opening collections, he would walk the halls and he signed the checks. That was my extent with Mr. Taki. I was a nervous wreck, and the whole of the old city in Jerusalem knew Mr. Taki was coming because I was a wreck.
How'd they know?
I told them.
Oh, you told people.
I don't know what I'm going to do with him. I couldn't believe it. So he came. I met him in the parking lot, he and his wife. We went to the Kotel, the Western Wall. All of my friends, Mr. Taki, hey, Mr. Taki, it was amazing. He came back till 4 o'clock in the afternoon asking me questions. Why you like this Judaism? Why? Because he went to the Kotel and Jewish people pray like this. Why you do this when you pray to your God? It was amazing. Now, you have to know, when I was becoming religious, I was this bright, successful businesswoman.
In whose eyes? The people?
In everybody's eyes, but in the world. But when I was becoming religious, and I would say, I can't go out with you guys Friday night, I have to go light candles, they would say to me, who's they? Why can't you light when you go home? I had no answers because I'd never studied. And I would just say, they'd say, who's they? I'd say, Chazal. They said, what's Chazal? I'd say, I don't know.
Oh, man, that's an interesting place to be in.
It was such a conflict. You have no idea.
But yet, despite the fact that you didn't have any answers, you knew that you're not going out, you're lighting the candles, you're missing out on hanging out with people. What do you think?
And people wanted to come with me.
With you. What do you think it was either about who you were or about the old city or about your path at the time? What was it you think that it made you do things without having the answers? What do you think that was?
I didn't know it at the time, but I know it today, looking back, is that I was so desperate for meaning, which I never realized I didn't have.
Until you had it.
Till I had it. That when I started to learn about my Judaism and the truth of it, there was no apples and oranges, nothing to compare.
So you think...
I was so hungry for it.
So you think it was the feeling and experiencing meaning that eliminated your need for answers? Because that was enough.
Well, I didn't know where to get the answers. That's why I went to Israel.
But the meaning without the answers was enough.
Was enough to start me off.
To start you off. It was enough to tell people, I'm staying home to light candles, you guys go without me.
Yeah, and I couldn't tell you why.
Fascinating.
It's just they told me that's what I have to do.
And it was that meaningful for you.
Yes.
Now I have to go back because you've been Jewish your whole life. We're all Jewish by descent. Both your parents are Jewish. I know we're skipping backwards here, but take me to your house growing up, just so I can make a little sense here. What type of, I know it was a secular household, but take me back to you're 10, your parents are Jewish, all your friends in school, 99% are probably not Jewish. Take me back to that time. I grew up Orthodox in your house, in an Orthodox community, in a Jewish. So that's pretty much all I know from a child's perspective. I know what Orthodox looks like. I've never been a child in a secular Jewish household. Take me back to that and walk me through what went on. What did a Friday night look like growing up?
Nothing. I mean, in terms of Judaism, absolutely nothing. Until I was 11, we would drive on Friday night for dinner to my grandparents. And I remember my grandmother lighting candles till I was 11.
And that was
the Sabbath candles, yes. That was it. Then my brother's bar mitzvah. They had to pull his teeth to force him to study. And I was so upset that I never got the opportunity to learn about it. Even then, I felt it.
You felt it.
And my grandmother always used to say to me, be Jewish, be Jewish. But not she, not my parents, nobody could tell me what the heck that meant. I didn't know what that meant. But my grandmother had a tremendous impact on my life.
Judaism-wise or just in general? In
general, but the Judaism for whatever she could give over.
Huh.
Matzah brai for, breakfast.
Right. So
cultural.
It sounds like you got just enough of a tickle to make you have something to build on when you're 36.
Right. Well, before that, why did I even start going for Judaism? My friend was religious, the one that got me the job at Lord & Taylor that set up the interviews. And she said to me when I moved to New York, you have to go to Lincoln Square Synagogue in New York. You'll meet guys. So I went. And that's where I got it. I'm telling you, I had no depth. I mean, I am deep, but I just followed with whatever felt, and I couldn't fight the truth of what I was learning.
Wow.
Period.
I just have to throw this in because I don't want to forget. Today, I mean, it's this known saying, what was it, Steve Jobs, you can only connect the dots looking back, right? Today you could connect all the dots, sure, but looking back, it's interesting. Looking back, is there any part of you that's shocked by the fact, because obviously this means a lot to you, this whole Judaism thing. Are you shocked that it took you 36 years, or is that just like my life? Like,
no, because I'd never even heard about it before I did.
Yeah, because it's sort of shocking for someone who Judaism takes on such a meaningful place in their heart. It took you 36 years.
But I never heard about it. I never heard the word Shabbos, Sabbath. Nothing. I never heard Passover. Passover, we used to go to our cousins. I have a huge extended family. Our home was always open. We had an Olympic-sized swimming pool in the backyard, so everybody was there. My parents, especially my mother, incredibly social. I get that aspect of my personality from her. Just fun. No meaning, but fun. Everything was fun. Lots of friends come over, cook, barbecue, be in our house. My brother and my friends always wanted to be in our house.
Oh.
It was amazing.
It's the house you grew up in?
House I grew up in.
Judaism, barely nothing. Anything. Okay. So you're in Israel.
I'm in Israel. I write a letter for another 6 months. I get a phone call that I could have it. Mr. Taki calls. He's coming for the day. He's in Israel with me. 4:00 in the afternoon. I walk him back out to their car was waiting, he and his wife. I say goodbye to the wife. He turns around and he says to me, I have enjoyed today, and I have to tell you, you can stay in Israel as long as you want, and you will always have a job when you come back.
Why do you think he said that?
He liked me. I don't know.
You have no idea.
And and I said, really? And he goes, yes. As much time as you need here. Look, he's Japanese. He was a religious man himself, whatever that meant. And I believe that he appreciated the value of what I was doing.
Wow.
And he said, as long as you want.
Wow. Talk about luck in one's life. I mean,
tremendous.
If that's what you want to call it.
Tremendous.
It's
blessing.
Blessing.
From above.
Unbelievable.
And I learned a lesson when they drove away. I burst out crying in the parking lot. I was a huge crier. And I understood right then, Yoel, and this is why I always have said to you, live your dream. We don't know how to dream big enough as to what could happen to us. And that's what I learned that day when he drove away. You
learned that you weren't dreaming big enough.
I didn't dream at all. I never dreamt that would happen.
Wow. Was that the last time you've seen him?
Oh, no, we're in touch.
Okay,
gotcha. To this day.
It would be crazy if that was the last time you've seen him, meaning like you stayed in
Israel.
You
were in touch with him. You called him when you were in Hawaii once. You spoke on the phone.
Did I really?
Yes.
Oh.
I gave you his number.
He lives in Hawaii.
He loves being in touch. Yeah.
That's awesome. Wow. So I'm assuming you've never gone back to New York?
No, I went back to New York.
How long after that?
A year. Oh, at the end of the year, I realized I needed to go back. Was I still normal? Now I'm religious. I'm a real religious
Full-blown
woman.
religious.
Full-blown.
Now, tell the people watching, because people watching this will say, okay, I'm a religious Christian, but my life doesn't need to turn upside down. Give the people a 2-minute, as best you can, explanation why for a Jewish person to go from secular to religious, your life does and will turn upside down, just so people understand. So
I used to eat kosher at home and would eat out in restaurants when I did business lunches. Anne Klein, Donna Karan did the most gorgeous pants with the pleats and a silk shirt and blazer. It was like to die for. And now I only wear skirts. Religious women don't wear pants. I went from, the usual whatever the fashion is to being modest, which is covering and the elbows covered and longer skirts. And it was those kinds of things.
So it literally affects every aspect of your life.
For a woman more than a man, but yes.
It's what you eat, what you wear, where you go, when you go, the Sabbaths you're doing nothing.
And it's also, I had a very large presence. I have a presence. I'm 5'8". I walk in a room, people see me. And modesty is not just in the clothing you wear, but in the tones of voice, in not being the loudest laugh in the room. It's toning down. Wow.
You mentioned the word modesty, and I want to talk to you about it because, again, growing up in a religious environment, religious household, I've never stepped from, no limits, no rules into a world where now I need to be aware of anything. And I'm not a woman, so modesty probably, as far as tone of voice and things like, sure, it applies to me on a human level, but I'm not a female. What was it like for you? I'm specifically saying the word modesty, but it could apply to all aspects. What was that like to step from a world where do what you want, say what you want, laugh as loud as you want, and step into this world where, as you, in your words, had to tone it down? Was that an adjustment?
Oh my God. When I got off the plane in Israel, I took a walk one morning in one of the most religious neighborhoods, and I thought I was going to die. I said, what have I done? These women wearing scarves down to their eyebrows and house coats and like clippy clogs, and I'm just off the plane running the biggest fashion company in America. And I'm like, the fact that I stayed blows my mind today.
Wow.
It was such a culture shock. And I realized that my entire identity, I did not have a personal identity. Everything was, this is me from Saks Fifth Avenue. This is me from Gianni Versace. This is me from Anne Klein. And when I got to Israel, I knew nobody could know who I was. I wanted to just find myself and be liked because I was me.
You wanted to become an individual.
Yeah. And when I was becoming religious, all of the religious world knew that the head of Anne Klein is becoming religious, and they all wanted her for Shabbos dinner, Friday night dinner. They didn't care about me. They didn't know who I was.
So despite the fact that you tried to, maybe not completely not mention it, but you did try to keep it down
in Israel.
In Israel. Despite that, the word got out.
Well, how did it get out? Rabbi David Refson, David Refson, is the dean and the founder of this Neve school.
Okay.
And he called me in one day, and he said, listen, we're having a little gathering in 2 days, and I just want you to speak and tell your story. So I said, okay. And I was very good friends with a man, Rabbi Stephen Bars. And I called him up, and he was in the old city also. I said, listen, they want me to speak, few people. Would you help me just write my story? I don't know, I never spoke, like I was a spokeswoman for the company, but I never. That day I got there, it was the dedication of a dormitory. There were over 200 people, a dais of the most important rabbis in the country, not to mention some of the richest people, and I had to go up and tell my story. And that's how it all got out.
Now, when he asked you to tell your story, despite the fact that you wanted to keep it down... I thought it was going to
be to some students.
But you were okay. You were like, I'm being asked, I'll share it.
Yeah.
Got it.
I was there long enough at that point.
Got it. So let me ask you this. We hear all the time of, people with money. It's tough to date when you have money. And why? Because how do I know that they want me for me, right? They want me for my money. And it's this known thing. I mean, there's money or who you are. It's tough to date when you're someone, because how do you know they want you for you? Once the word got out, you mentioned everyone were inviting you for Friday night dinners and things like that. Did any part in you say, gee, do they really want Chana Gilman for Shabbos night dinner? or do they want an Aunt Klein?
For sure. They wanted Anne Klein.
Did that bother you?
Here's what bothered me, and this is the one thing that almost completely turned me off to staying religious. It was before I went to Israel. I was in it now, in it.
Uh-huh.
And I would go, and the rabbi at the synagogue that I started where I would meet guys, he said, you have to go to these families' homes. You have to go. You don't come from it. What does it look like? What do relationships between husbands and wives look like? How do they treat the children? It's different from how you grew up. This is what would happen, and this to this day, I can't speak about it without emotion. We'd be sitting at the table, and the women usually are at an end together, and men are at the other end, but the same table. And I would love when they made the husband would make kiddush over the wine, or and then he would start to speak, like give something on the weekly parsha at a Bible portion. And I was so hungry. He would start, and the wife would say to me, my daughter has great taste. Can she get a job at Anne Klein? And I'm thinking, it's the Sabbath. We don't talk about work on the Sabbath. This is my thought. So then I turn to listen to the husband, and she nudges me, and she goes, tell us, what is Donna Karen really like? And the biggest piece was, now we're leaving. We put on our coats. I'm either by myself going out or with friends. And the mother with her kids there, you really want to do this? You want to give it all up for this? This, I tell you, I was willing to change my entire life to give up the dream, and you don't even know what you have. What am I making myself crazy for?
Wow.
This was the biggest conflict that I suffered.
How'd you overcome that?
With a lot of help with the rabbis and talking about it, and I was furious. How could women be so not proud of the gifts that I'm willing to throw my entire life away for? I'm still emotional thinking about it.
Wow. That's incredible. Again, hearing you talk about it, it brings me back to when I interviewed to become a flight attendant. I think I told you this before, maybe not. I showed up for the in-person interview, and a room full of people, and it's a 12-hour process. And there's about an hour break in the middle where you could just go in downtown Portland, you could just go and buy lunch. So me and this other guy, Brad, grabbed a sandwich someplace, and we got talking. And it was my first time applying to this airline, to any airline. It was my first in-person interview with any airline to become a flight attendant. And Brad was telling me how it's his 4th time trying. And I remember looking at him, biting my sandwich, looking at him and asking him, saying, Brad, what is wrong with you? In the sense, I was telling him, if I were Brad and they would send me away, they wouldn't ever send me away even 3 times because I wouldn't show up after the 2nd. I'm the type of person, if a company won't hire me once, I might try again, probably not. But even if I do and they say no, I'm the type of person who'd get like, I don't want to say offended, but I'd be like, you guys don't see what I got. Thank you very much. I'll find someone else. That's who I am. Brad had it within him, the humility or whatever you want to call it, to show back up again 4 times. And knowing him today, he'd do it a 5th, but they hired him on the 4th. And when you were speaking of this, discouragement or this lack of ownership that these women had, it reminded me of Brad, because if I were you in that situation and it would happen 2 times, I'd be out of there. I'd be like, you know what, guys?
That was rough. That was rough. Because today I am known to be and consider myself a very proud Jewish woman.
Huh.
Nothing comes before my Judaism, as you know. And that almost destroyed me.
Wow. So you overcome that. Where are you holding in life?
So that's before I took off to Israel. Mr. Taki says, stay as long as you want. I stayed at the end of the year. I needed to go back. I needed to see if I was still normal. Could I do the job? I went back. Anne Klein gave me made me the director of the petites division. It's when petites were just starting to, designers were just starting to do petite clothes, petite-sized clothing.
Now, again, as someone who knows nothing about fashion, in my head, when I hear you say it was the first time designers began paying attention to petite people, did petite people not exist before then?
They had a very hard time. Well, they could buy it in other places, but not by Ralph Lauren, Anne Klein, Donna Karan.
So the big designers were not...
We're just starting it then,
investing
in 87.
in this group of people in America who were petite.
Yes, in
Got
1987.
Okay.
So it's 87, I go back, I'm in the company 3 months, and I get a call from Rabbi Refson, who again is the dean and founder of the school, telling me he's coming to the States. Would I meet with him? Of course. So we go out for lunch, and he said, I've never had an office in America. I want to open one, and would you do it? Be the executive director in America for the school. Yol, I have to tell you, there's a concept in Judaism called Hakara Satov. It's the obligation of appreciation that you have to have in life for people that are kind to you, for anything. And I thought immediately, yes, it didn't take 30 seconds. What better way could I express my gratitude for my Judaism, for what the school gave me, than to help other professional Jewish women learn about their Judaism? So I said yes. And I went in and I resigned. Again, I resigned.
Now, are they not, they must be sick of you at this point.
No, they weren't. And I'll tell you the truth. When you are into growth, the people around you know your next step before you know it. So they knew something's going to come down the pike because they watched me growing.
Wow.
Nobody was ever surprised. So I went in and I quit. And at that point, they said, you have to go. Like, we get it. Everybody knew about Neve. Everybody knew about speaking Lashon Hara, gossip about people. I remember a girl used to come in and say, she was not Jewish. She would say, I know this is Lashon Hara. And she'd slam my office door and she said, but if you don't tell her to blah, 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 blah. It was so funny. They were all about my Judaism.
Wow.
I was never shy about it. So now I've given my notice and I have to tell my staff. So whenever there was big fabric notifications or anything, we would call everyone into the showroom. So we called a meeting at 3:00. My 100 people would come in. And I said, guys, I have to tell you something. I'm leaving. I'm going to be the executive director of Neve. They all knew what Neve College was. And the first words there were about 80 women there. The first words out of someone's mouth was, in this tone of voice, I can't believe how much attention God is paying to her again. Wow. And before I could come back with something witty, because you have to be very witty, someone else in the crowd said, yes, but don't you see how much attention she pays to God?
Wow. Interesting.
That floored me.
Wow, but it was true.
Totally.
Wow. Wow, and this is going on between them. Okay, so
I leave and I run Neve. I start running Neve. I was there 2 or 3 years. I went to Israel twice a year during that period. And when I got there, Rabbi Refson said, I have somebody for you to meet, and he introduced me to your father.
My father.
Your father.
I'm a product of of you and the person he introduced you to.
Yes.
It's funny how life works. And now we're sitting here, fascinating. Okay, so he introduces you to this guy. Who is this guy? And I know who my father is, but I'm asking because I'd never known my father. What year was this that you met him?
We got married in 90.
So you met him 89?
I met him in April of 90.
Okay, I know who my father is, but I don't know who my father was in April of 90.
So
who was my father?
Your father, I didn't know him either. This was a setup, like in the Jewish religion. He was 2 years older than me. And he was from Vilna. He was a very renowned musician, trombone player.
Uh-huh.
He had done the military in Russia and in Israel. He left his family after the Munich attack of the athletes in Munich. He said he's got to go to Israel. That really blew it up for him. And he came. He never thought he'd see his family again or anything. He had a brother and 2 parents.
Who stayed behind?
Who stayed behind. When they came out, they went to New York. Then he followed them to New York. And when we met, like me, he had decided he'd become religious, but decided that he needed to study. So he was in a men's school. It's called the yeshiva, for older men to learn their Judaism.
In Israel?
In Israel.
Your school was in what city?
Jerusalem.
His school was in what city?
At that time, Bnei Brak.
Okay.
But he started in Jerusalem. And then we were set up. So we met in a hotel. We really liked each other right away. And he said, what do we do next? I said, you have to meet my rabbi.
He said, what do we do next? After the first date or after?
At the end of the first date.
He said, what do you do next? Because you guys didn't know.
We didn't know how to do this.
Wow, okay.
So I said, you have to meet my rabbi. So we met the rabbi, Rabbi Refson. And Rabbi Refson, I was on pins and needles because I liked the guy. And
right.
He called and he said, good guy. And we got married in June.
So 2 months you dated?
We dated, we had 9 intense dates. We got engaged on the 9th day with 5 dates.
On the 9th day?
There was Jewish holidays in there, so we didn't see each other.
5 dates?
5 dates.
You dated a guy 5 dates and got married?
Got married, that was in April. I flew back to the States, went back, and we were the first wedding that was ever at Neve, on the rooftop of Neve Yerushalayim.
Wow. And you are in love?
Yeah, liked him.
Butterflies, the whole thing?
Yeah.
Amazing. You get married, and now...
Well, wait, I got to tell you. The work that I do today, which I hope we'll get to, I have lived every woman's life, meaning I was an older single. I got married at 40 years old. He was 42. So it was quite a thing for him to choose a woman. He'd never been married, never had kids. To choose a woman at my age, wanting children.
That's a big risk.
Big risk, and I have to give him so much credit for that. Excuse me. So we got married, and with great blessing, I got pregnant with your brother. I had him at 41, and I had you at 42.
Wow.
Natural.
So you
all
had
natural.
me at 42?
Yes.
I always tell people you had me at 44, but that's not true.
41 and 42.
41 and 42, all natural. Wow.
Yeah.
How uncommon is that?
Totally.
Completely. People don't have children over 40 generally.
Well, no, there's high age of birth rate, but most people women usually marry not the greatest, rightest guy because their clock is ticking, where men will usually marry the woman they want to marry.
Wow. Now, let's just because we're talking about getting married at an older age and having kids. You can't have kids at 60, so your clock was ticking as well. And I want to touch on that. I will fast forward. My parents are divorced today, meaning you and your ex-husband. You guys got divorced. How long were you married? 20 years?
Just shy of 20 years.
Just shy of 20 years. So today, again, this goes back to you could connect the dots looking backwards. You were married for just shy of 20 years. You got married towards the end of the ticking of your clock, having baby clock.
But again, I never thought about it. I didn't think, Yul. I just got married.
So when you married him at 40...
We got married in Israel. We were there for a couple of weeks. We flew back to New York to my apartment. I literally put the suitcase down. I called my gynecologist. I said, I'm 40. I just got married. What do I do to have kids? He burst out laughing. He said, try being with your husband for 3 months, then call me.
Oh, my God.
And 3 months later, I was pregnant with your brother. Totally natural,
so
no treatment.
You're saying that when you got married, you didn't think of the clock?
No.
Did you want kids?
Yeah. Well, I was more afraid to be a mother than a wife because I didn't know how to do anything.
You figured I'll be a wife, but a mother was like...
I hoped. I hoped.
Right.
I prayed.
Huh.
But
So you don't consider yourself, and this is where I'm getting to and what I was starting to get at before. looking back, you don't consider yourself to be a 40-year-old who part of why she jumped into a marriage with someone was to have the kids.
No, I jumped into it with him because he chose me and I wanted to be married.
Got it. Okay.
And thank God I would do it in a heartbeat again for you and your brother.
Great. You could say that today looking back, and that's awesome.
Totally.
Okay, you get married on the roof of Neve Yerushalayim, and I've seen pictures.
Yes.
And you were the first one.
Yes.
Was it a new building, or did weddings not take place there?
They just never did it.
It was not a thought.
They offered it to me.
Huh. You get married in Jerusalem. What's next? Take me to the day following your marriage with my dad, because you need to understand, from my perspective, I know my parents since I was 0. I probably remember you guys since I was 5. I don't know you guys prior to me being born. So you get married. Where do you live? What's
We went back to Manhattan, and your father looked for, I was working for Neve, and your father on Wall Street, the office was on Wall Street, and your father was looking for a place to learn, to continue his learning, because he was fairly new at this, and I'd been religious for many years. Well, from 30, I was 33 and now I'm 40. And he was just a couple of years. So he found a place to study in Muncie, New York. We moved there. Your brother was born there. I became pregnant with you there. And then he was offered a job in Brooklyn, and we moved to Brooklyn.
From Muncie? From
Muncie. And then there's a men's yeshiva for men called Esha Torah. And Rav Noach Weinberg, who ran the yeshiva, was the founder. He's gone now about 10 years. He offered your father to move to Israel to run the Russian program. And so he moved us there.
And I'm a year and a half old. My brother's 3.
Yes.
We moved to Israel.
You moved to Israel.
You tell Neve what?
I had stopped Neve by that point because I was pregnant with you and I couldn't make the bus ride. No, with your brother. I couldn't make the bus from Muncie to Wall Street without needing a bathroom. So I had to quit.
You had to quit your job for bathroom reasons. That's a first.
Pregnant.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you quit your job, pregnant with my brother. So 3 years before we moved to Israel, you were done with Neve on Wall Street.
But about, yes.
2.5. And you were stay-at-home mom for 2.5 years.
I did stuff, but I don't know what I don't remember.
Okay,
at that point.
We moved to Israel. I know we moved to the old city.
We moved to the old city. Esha Torah gave us an apartment.
Go ahead, blow your nose.
It was great.
Let the people see what you look like when you blow your nose. Let the people in.
It was great. Then we moved to Neve Yaakov. We lived there. That's where you grew up. And your father did his thing. And then I had my own business for a while with rabbis that would fly to America. And I made all of their travel appointments for them.
Appointments with who?
Their donors.
How do you know these donors? Your past life?
No, they gave me lists.
Got it.
I never gave phone numbers. You had to supply the number. And I would take enough rabbis to handle, but they didn't all travel at the same time.
So they didn't utilize you for the connections you could have made them. They utilized you for your ability to communicate with people.
Open the doors.
Open the doors. Interesting. So when I think of those 18 years of fashion under your belt that you let go of, not really. That helped you out.
Totally.
10
that
years
fashion
later.
business, women, unfortunately, in my generation, we operate on masculine energy.
What do you mean by that?
We all have masculine, feminine energy.
Right.
You're a male. You have your core energy is masculine. I'm a female. My core energy is feminine. But my generation learned to operate with masculine as the first.
Is that the rise of feminism?
Yeah, from the feminism.
Okay.
Which wasn't all bad. It learned how to multitask, how to prioritize, how to get it done, how to build a business, run a business.
How to pursue a career.
A career. That's very masculine in its nature. And that's where I suffered the most. Because when you needed a diaper change or your father wanted dinner, none of you cared that I ran Incline 2. So that was a big issue for me at 40 years old, getting my balance.
Interesting.
Huge issue. Your father suffered for it.
None of us cared that you ran incline 2. You had to change a diaper.
And I had to put food on the table and go grocery shop. I had to do the do.
You became a mom.
Yeah, and that was my favorite thing in the whole world.
Let me ask you this. When was the first time that you remember living for someone else? A day following your marriage, or the day that your child was born?
The day your brother was born.
And that was an adjustment.
That was easy.
So stepping out of living for you and living for someone else?
The adjustment was being the wife.
Huh.
Being the mother was the most delicious yumminess I have ever experienced.
Wow. Interesting. We spent how long in the old city?
6 months, maybe.
Wow. And then?
Yakov, we moved.
Why did we move?
Because we had to get an apartment. We bought an apartment. And we raised you guys there. So I had the rabbi's job as project. Uh-huh. And then because of my phone skills, I deliver well. I've been the face of companies. So our next door neighbor said a friend of his was looking for a cold caller. And that's when I went to Pioneer Financial Services in Israel. And I worked for a man named Darren Green, who's a dear friend today. I worked for him for 6 years. We started out he hired me as a cold caller, and then I became his assistant.
Is he still there doing?
Yes.
He's still doing. Everything's the same.
He works from home, but he's still with Pioneer.
He's doing his thing, and you guys are in touch.
Oh, yeah.
So again, you just don't burn bridges.
We'll see each other online, and he'll just message me on the computer or stuff like that. So
it served you well in life to not burn bridges. Now I want let's crazy life story. I mean, I've never met anyone close to your age who's gone through such a, what would the word be? Diverse, so different geographically, what you've done, who you've worked for. I mean, it's crazy. Let's go to today. Today you said this yourself, you are let's call it a full-blown, absolute Orthodox Jewish woman.
For 30-some years now.
For 30-some years. Let me ask you this. You spoke of that meaning that you felt when people were asking you, let's go out on Friday nights, let's do this, and your answer to that was, although you didn't know why, you said, no, I need to light the candles, or you didn't have answers to things, but it was meaningful enough to you to follow through with them. 30-something years in, and the reason I'm asking this question, and I'm getting a little off trail, but I think it's important. I asked a pilot, so I want to be a pilot. You know this very well. I spoke with a 50-year-old pilot who flies for the airlines. He's a captain. And we were talking about his training. He started flying when he was 20 or 22. Today he's 50. He's been doing it. He's been flying for as long as we've been religious. And I looked at him in his eyes and I said, we were in Burbank, California. We were, passengers were getting off. We got new passengers on the plane and we were about to fly back to Seattle in 40 minutes. And I looked him in his eyes and I asked him, because this was all I cared about. I asked him, I said, despite all the company BS, despite all the politics, despite all the CEO who you like or don't like and the president and whatever you agree with or don't agree with, despite all that, when you in 40 minutes will rotate with the yoke and have the plane leave the ground around the corner from where we were, in that moment, 30 years in, will you be filled with that same excitement and rush that you had when you were 22? And he looked at me and without hesitation, he said, absolutely yes. So let me ask you that question. Today, 30 years in, being religious, lighting those candles on Friday night, could you tell someone out there who might be you 30 years ago? Maybe they're in the old city right now watching this, and they're thinking to themselves, today, tonight, I'm full of meaning. This is the best thing ever. But what if they're letting go too of a career? And part of them is thinking, how could I know that in 30 years I'll feel the same? Could you with 100% certainty tell me that the meaning you feel today when you light those candles is the same or more meaning than you did 30 years ago?
More meaning.
More meaning.
Totally.
Talk about that a little bit, because if I were you, or if I were in your shoes in the old city today, the person I am today, a big part of me would think, this is a commitment that I'm not sure the return on investment will be there in 30 years. It's meaningful
Well, see,
today.
you're a future thinker. I'm not.
So what if someone's a future thinker? What would you tell them? What if someone out there is saying, how could I know that this will be meaningful to me? And I know you're not a future thinker. What would you tell someone like that if they had the opportunity to talk to you? What would your answer be?
You see, what I've learned today, and this is the work I do in my work today with women, is that we need to, especially women, need to develop a quality of life, whether anything in your life changes or not. So when I got religious, I didn't know if I'd meet someone to get married. I didn't know if I'd have kids. I didn't know anything. But the religion gives me the quality of life. The personal growth and personal development that I've done on myself has nothing to do with my religion. It can be a spiritual journey. But I sat for years on my couch and prayed for whatever I prayed for, and nothing changed because I wasn't a partner with the process. It's two different things. So you could say, well, I do my mitzvahs, my commandments, what do you call it? And, I pray to God and, I want the blessings. But here's what, again, I speak mostly for women. We bring split energy to our prayers. And God does not match our words. I want to get married. I'm divorced now. It'll be 9 years, right? I think so. About. Yeah. So I'm divorced 9 years. I want to get married. I work with single women for whatever reason. So many women will say, I really want to get married. And she does. I believe her. But there's no good men at this age. I've got to lose 20 pounds before anybody's going to look at me. So I'm divorced, and I know they'll find out how unlovable I really am.
That's what they're saying.
That's their subconscious.
Inner.
They don't know this is running. But it's the vibration that gets matched, not the words. And usually it's our limited belief vibration that far outweighs, I want to get married, but I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm too overweight, there's no good men, they're all trolls. And that's what you get more of.
Wow, so interesting. So that's the focus of people. I didn't know this. So people think that. So do any of them take action? Are there people out there who go, I need to lose 20 pounds and lose 20 pounds? Or is it always sort of...
Look, I'm a 40-pound recovered overweight person.
Right. Uh-huh.
And I'm keeping it off almost 4 years. People do lose weight. But more often than not, it's a cycle of lose, gain, lose, gain.
Wow. Let me ask you this. Let's. This is that time where I'll say, in the name of wrapping things up, because just wrapping things up with your story will take a few minutes. You along with an incredible life story, and not just you. This is true with anyone and everyone. Along with a rich history, comes a very unique perspective. The two go hand in hand. The kids in Thailand who were stuck in the cave, they have a certain perspective on life that people who were not stuck in a cave for as long as they don't have it. Cancer survivors, they have a take on life you can't get if you haven't gone through the same. So you have a take on life that only you have because you're the only one who's gone through this intense and crazy story that we just covered. Along with that perspective, with that view of the world, you mentioned how when you were in Israel initially, you were being invited to Friday nights at families, and you were the Aunt Klein person.
That was in New York before Israel.
That was in New York. So you were invited to all these religious homes, and you mentioned how the lack of ownership on their part was evident.
Lack of pride.
Today, with the perspective you have, do you still see that? If you do, could you maybe understand why it happens more than you could at the time? Did you gain a little insight into that more so than you had at the time? Talk about the evolution of how you viewed these religious people who disgusted you so much at some point, and today you're part of them. You're one of them. You identify as them. You sit here saying,
I wear scarves
I
and
wear
I have
scarves
house
and
coats.
I have the house coats, and I've been doing it for 30 years.
Right.
How do you make sense of all that?
You grow. You grow. Here's the thing that I have to tell you. Growth, a religious journey, and again, a personal development journey are two different things. My trajectory in my Judaism has been consistent and powerful in my life. When I was in Israel, when we lived there, my story was a very famous story. I spoke about modesty in all the American seminaries in Israel to the girls that go for a gap year. I did that for 18 years. When I made the decision after divorcing your father, when we got divorced, I made the decision to move here. You were here, my elderly parents were here. Your brother chose to stay in Israel. I knew that I had to do my life differently or I would recreate the same life. And I saw that there were things I didn't want again. So I've been on this personal development journey for 10 years, but it was only the last 2.5 years that I connected the dots. I took myself off the stage, if you will, stopped all my speaking, I did nothing. And I really went inward to do this. My fears were always of visibility and fear of judgment, because I had a lot of that in my life. And 1.5 years ago, I started doing Facebook Live, videos on Facebook. And I'm a coach today, where I have taken everything and I work with women, which is absolutely beautiful.
Absolutely.
And not just religious Jewish women of all variety.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you undercharge, but you don't think so. You think you're okay, but we could talk about that some other time.
I want people to know that you've been a big coach in my life.
No, hey.
You know that, right, kiddo?
I appreciate that. So you mentioned you had a fear of visibility.
Yes.
You're currently on camera. Anyone potentially could watch this video. Not that you said anything horrifically embarrassing. But you did open up and share about who you are in your past and your history. Why do you think this would be something you wouldn't have done 5 years ago? What changed?
Oh my gosh. I wouldn't have done my own videos 5 years ago. I have always known that I have gifts. It took me a while to truly identify them. And I finally decided that I have to live my truth. Now, most people, I'm saying women, your greatest gift in life is what you were shamed for as a child. That is always a truth.
Wow.
What you've been shamed for is a gift that you've denied yourself. And that gift has to come out. It's a live entity. It's an energy. And if we don't express our gifts, it usually will turn inside of us and begin to eat us with aches and pains. In my age, joint pain, neck pain, lower back pain, migraines, whatever it is. The physical aspect is real, it hurts, but it's coming because it's a truth, an energy that's trying to come out. And I decided that I had to express my truth. That's what changed for me.
What do you think it was that caused you to decide that? Did anything happen?
I watched women. I was very successful, and I know many women have this. Run companies, very successful. To the world, you look very together. But inside, you are dead. Or you feel that you're faking. Or you look at all of your friends and this was me, I knew I had the gifts. I knew I was as bright or as capable, and it never worked for me. Everybody else did it. because I never achieved the success that I did after Anne Klein.
Why?
I took a nosedive. I mean, the spiraling out of control marriage, whatever that noise was about, we believe it, all of that. And it was a worthiness issue. And 2 years ago, I understood, a year and a half ago, that if I don't go for it, I never will. And
Wow.
It was just do or die.
And 2 years later, you have clients all over the world.
I have clients. I have 220-something videos, live videos on Facebook. I have a YouTube channel. I have a website. I just did a radio interview. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm on Clearfo.
You're on Clearfo. Yeah, no, this is, I mean, even, I know initially I said you're my mom, which is probably why I even know you. I don't know if I'd know you if you weren't my mom, but even if you weren't my mom, I think, again, I met many people in my life, many people who are closer to your age than 20. But again, that your past is so diverse that usually these episodes, when I sit with people, we talk about what they do, their job. But you've done so much.
But today I feel I'm using all my gifts. When I was running Anne Klein, when I was the it girl in the 80s in fashion, it was by sheer force of my personality. That's it. When I have studied the masculine feminine, and I've pulled the masculine back and I'm operating more in my feminine, and I've learned to allow to receive than to manipulate and control and get it done. It's two different energies. It's a whole different thing that comes to you.
What would you tell women or a woman watching out there right now? What would you tell a woman who's operating off her masculine energy, wants to make the crossover, if you want to call it that, and has no idea how to go about it? What would you tell them?
Call me.
You'd say call me. But what if they don't want to call you? Or what if they can't afford you because you're not free? What would you tell them?
Start with my videos. They're on my YouTube channel is Chana Gilman. They're all there.
And what if they don't want to watch your videos? What would you tell them now?
And what to do?
As far as when you were crossing over?
Start to observe yourself. Observe when because we know our inside. And we know when we were most women are afraid to ask for their needs to be met, whether it's in a relationship, a raise at work, with a friend. You want to do this, she wants to go there. We're afraid to express ourselves because we are so afraid that it will come out with an attitude, with a wrong tone of voice, and as very needy or, let's say, witchy. So just start to observe yourself. And awareness, there's a spectrum of life, and usually we're unaware, then it's aware, then it's cognitive, then it's emotional, those are efforting, then it breaks through in your nervous system and you never deal with that issue again. It's amazing.
Wow, so there's a lot of science to it,
yes.
And a lot of real things happening other than just thinking.
In your nervous system. It's your subconscious and it plays out in your body. Your body is vital to everyone but any woman.
Fascinating. Wow. We have a few more minutes. I gotta cut this because I could sit with you, as you know, for hours. What would you tell, let's talk about modesty for a second, because I know it's been a huge subject of yours. You did briefly mention something about how modesty is not only your clothes, but it's a tone of voice and how loud you laugh and all. There's so much more to it that I would miss if I wouldn't sit and have a conversation with you. What would you tell a 20-year-old girl? Let's refer to a religious Orthodox, or at least grew up in an Orthodox environment. A female who's struggling with understanding why they should tone their voice down. And I'm using those specific words, but it could apply to anything. They're struggling with the understanding of why being modest for a woman is a plus and not a minus. Well, what would you tell them?
Most women don't understand why. We believe in being attractive, but not attracting.
Say that again.
We believe that a woman should be attractive, but not attracting.
I love that. I love that. So people today believe, so people are focused, and I never thought of this. There's a difference between focusing on attracting someone to focusing on being attractive. I love that. Okay, go ahead.
So most women today, young or old, will say, "Yeah, let him control himself. What's the big deal? He's looking at me. It doesn't. Let him control where he looks." They put it all on the man. But we as a woman have a responsibility here. You know, the low, the tight. I worked with models, top models for years. They would sit in the room. They were the company models. And then at night, they would go on go-sees before new collections would open, like to Calvin or Ralph. But they would starve themselves during the week, and on Thursday afternoons, you would hear the crying coming out of the room.
Why?
First of all, on Thursday morning and for lunch, you'd see the delivery guys with the malts and the hamburgers and the French fries and the pizzas. And around 4 o'clock, you'd hear the crying. "I've got to go to Calvin tonight, and my stomach is sticking out." And
Wow.
Oh, horrible, horrible.
So this is real.
This is so real.
Wow.
Or they would go out and, you know, the models, they dress how they dress. I mean, they're beautiful girls, women, whatever. And they would come back so depressed, they didn't meet anybody. And then now they're going out tighter, shorter, lower. Just everything external to attract. And that's not how we operate.
How do you tell someone that the clothes they wear that will turn heads not attract someone? How do you explain that to someone?
Say that again?
How do you explain to these models that the shorter skirt that will turn guys' heads not attract the guy to them?
I found that it's more by example than by words. Words really don't teach. It's experiential. So when I was in the fashion and becoming religious, they would see that I changed, but my personality was still lively and, you know, awake and fun and whatever. And they wanted to know, how did that work? What are you doing?
How does that add up? Huh. I love what you said. There's people are focusing on attracting instead of focusing on being attractive, and the two are very different.
Totally different. A woman should be attractive and wear makeup and look good and feel good, and you don't have to be an Orthodox Jewish woman. You don't have to dress like me.
In general,
it applies to everyone.
Wow.
And it comes from the intent of why you're putting on what you put on.
Fascinating. So all those clothes in the world that will turn heads fall under the category of attracting.
If she wears it with that intention.
But they don't fall under the category of being attractive.
Some can. You can, yeah. You see, it's not the clothes. It's not the blouse. It's what you're doing with the blouse, in the blouse. How you're using the shirt.
So being attractive has to do with who you are, not what you're wearing.
Everything is an inside job.
Interesting. So these models who didn't meet anyone, they completely were down on themselves as human beings, and that's the vibration you were talking about that translates.
And they had to be so beautiful, but you can only starve yourself so much. That Thursday afternoon was always wild in our place.
I'm a guy, and that is not attractive. To think of someone who would eat and then cry.
It's the binge, and then...
Because they would feel bad. I mean, I feel bad for people who have to deal with that.
Yeah.
But it's not an attractive thing.
They have to go now to get the job, and if their stomach's sticking out, and, you know.
Fascinating. What would you tell... Is there anything we didn't... there's a lot we didn't cover, I'm sure, but... Is there anything else you wanna throw in there? Well, I'll ask you at the end how people could get a hold of you. But right now, could you think of any group of people, anything you want to get out there? Any thoughts? Anything we didn't cover?
Well, my message is always to women.
And what is it?
Be true to yourself. We are raised from the earliest age to make the big people in our life happy. That's mommy and daddy, and then it's the teachers, and then it's the friends, and now we're grown-up people pleasers, so pretzeled we can't stand ourselves. And just be true to yourself. It's the greatest gift you can give yourself.
I love that. I love that.
And I want to thank my son for having me on the show.
Yeah, thank me in a minute, because
so proud of you.
Yeah, cool. First, so people got to hear you for almost an hour and a half.
Wow.
There's a lot of ground to cover with who you are. So they obviously didn't get to know all of you. There's a lot we didn't talk about, and I know that, being your son. But we did cover a lot. So what if someone watched you and goes, you know what? I could resonate. She's gone through an experience that I'm either about to go through, or maybe I've gone through and I didn't quite figure it out the way you have, and they want to get a hold of you. How could people out there get in touch with you? What would be the best way for people to get into your circle?
They can email me at relationshipmasterymentor@gmail.com.
Okay.
They can find my personal page on Facebook, Chana Gilman, Chana Gilman. Private message me there. My website they can also reach me through is relationshipmasterymentor.weebly.com.
Relationshipmasterymentor.weebly.com. Spell Weebly?
Weebly.
Okay. Obviously, all these things will be in the description, so people could just click on the video description and it'll all be there.
Oh, and I have a private Facebook group. We're about 550 women. I teach in there every Sunday night. Anyone's welcome, women only. And that is on Facebook. Just put in the search box, Relationship Mastery with Confidence and Dignity, and I will approve you. It's asked how you found the group. Just say Clearfo.
Just say Clearfo. It's one word.
Clearfo.
That easy. I love it. Cool. Well, I don't need to shake your hand. Because, you want to shake? Yeah, I do this? Okay, I'll do that. Cool.
You are the best.
Yeah, thanks for sitting down with me.
Thank you for having. What an honor for a son to invite his mother. You'll thank you.
You're interested. That's awesome. I had fun.
I had fun too. I always have fun with you.